So we have a good question about the new retirement account inheritance rules. It's a little tricky. There are some carve outs, but it's important that we kind of walk through this a little bit. Sorry about the dog. He won't get out of my lap today. Before we get there, I'd like you to think about someone who's freaking out about a thing that's popped into their lives, but you made their life easier by sharing our video. We would appreciate it, as will your friend. Perhaps they're dealing with this particular issue. I'm 𝗂𝗲𝗂𝗲𝗏, an estate planning attorney in New York and New Jersey, and we are here to educate everyone for free. So please drop us your questions, and hopefully together we're going to help some folks along the way. Now, there is a new, what we call a 10-year payout rule for the majority of the usual beneficiaries, right? And by usual beneficiaries, it's like kids, grandkids, in most circumstances, not all, obviously. Now, that 10-year payout, which I'm going to address in a moment, does not apply to certain categories of individuals who still do receive what's called a lifetime payout schedule. Those are your surviving spouse, minor children, of which we do not suggest ever naming a minor child directly under a retirement account. That doesn't mean you can't provide for them via other means through that retirement account, but not directly. 3, a disabled or chronically ill person. And then 4, an individual who is not more than 10 years younger, right? Like a sibling, something like that. Okay. The prior rule, now spouses have their sort of own allowances and probably definitely the most flexibility when it comes to having a rollover with a retirement and stretching the distribution as far as possible. But the prior rule for even children, and now just these few eligible designated beneficiaries, is basically figuring out what their age is following the death of the person who owned the retirement account and using the IRS basically charts to determine their life expectancy. That then life expectancy is the period over which distribution has to take place, and it just gets adjusted by 1 year every year. Okay. It's a little different for surviving spouses. They get a little bit more of a benefit. I won't go into those details, but just know it's over the lifetime of just those categories of individuals: minor children, disabled or chronically ill persons, or someone who's not more than 10 years younger. But now, right, children, let's just say in general, who are going to receive an inheritance from a retirement account, they will be required to take out all of the assets within 10 years. Now, on average, that is much shorter than their life expectancy of those beneficiaries. So what's the end result? Faster tax in bigger chunks. My God, I'm tongue-tied today. Faster tax in bigger chunks to the IRS, especially because it's taxed at ordinary rates, right? Children at that stage of their life, in most scenarios, are typically at the peak of their working careers. So that means they're at an ordinary tax bracket of their highest working level, and they have to take it out over that 10-year period. So it's less money to your family in the end. It's a little beyond the scope of this video to talk about the additional nuances if you're naming a trust as a beneficiary or a trust under a trust if you're going to go crazy. But there are a few things you can do in considering what your options are, right? First, determine who your beneficiaries are ultimately going to be. Figure out what the payout is and if the overall tax consequence is going to be detrimental. And whether or not you have beneficiaries within the family where you can kind of shift distribution around among them. For instance, if you have charitable intentions, right? Using the retirement rather than the other assets will eliminate that tax consequence for the family and thereby provide them with more. If you have a disabled beneficiary, if they were to receive more from the retirement, they'd have a longer stretch of using those assets as opposed to other beneficiaries. So there can be some creativity in the way that your assets are distributed among your beneficiaries with a little forethought. Now, alternatively, if none of those options are available and the tax consequence is significant because you've accumulated a lot in your retirement, as was always encouraged to do over time, you can prepare a plan to either convert or use your retirement in retirement and pay the tax on it, right? So conversion is like basically paying the tax and putting it into like a Roth account as opposed to a traditional account where it still grows income tax free. But then what happens is on the receipt from the family, it does not have the ordinary income tax component to it because you've already paid the income tax on it, even though there will be growth over the years. So doing this, whether you're using it or converting it, can have kind of two different benefits, right? If your tax bracket in retirement is below, say, your kids at their peak work years, right? The family overall is paying less in taxes. Plus, you were paying the tax leaves less available to spend down should you require long-term care assistance at any time and don't have insurance. Essentially, you could get Medicaid to step in a little sooner. So I know that was a lot packed into a discussion about retirement inheritances, but I hope that you've learned something new here today and that you choose to share. As always, please take care.